Jim, how are you? Welcome back to A's Cast Live.
I'm doing well. How are you guys doing?
We're doing really good. We're really excited about JJ Bleday. We just had him on. He's still in Jupiter. He is going to be leaving Florida and heading to Mesa, Arizona. Like when we saw the trade, I know some A's fans were like, wait a minute, AJ Puck finally gave us something. We all know he was our top prospect, right? He gave us 62 games without an injury, and at times he was okay. What are we doing? Tell us, JJ Bleday, what are the A's getting with a guy who was once pick number 4 overall?
I wish I knew exactly, to be honest with you, because he's been different in pro ball than I thought he was going to be. When I saw him at Vanderbilt, I loved the pick when the Marlins took him. What I liked about him was, there's guys who hit for power who swing for the fences, and he hit for power at Vanderbilt. If I remember correctly, led NCAA Division I in homers when Vanderbilt won the national title in 2019. And Bleday hit home runs without swinging for the fences. Like I thought for sure this guy would definitely hit. He would have power. I don't want to say can't miss because there's no really such thing as a can't miss, but I really didn't think there was much of a chance he'd miss. And he's been different in pro ball. Like I don't know why, but he's become more of this guy who tries to pull and launch everything. So, he strikes out too much, more than I ever thought he would. He does draw a decent amount of walks. So I think there's still some semblance of an approach in there. I don't know. Like, I still think there's a lot of talent in there, Chris. I just don't know exactly how it's going to manifest itself. He's going to be this guy who hits, swings for the fences and hits 220 with a bunch of strikeouts and maybe runs into 20 homers a year. Or can he, I actually think if he hits for a higher average, he'll hit for more power if he just went back to his other approach and let the homers come naturally. The last time I saw a lot of him in person was in the fall league where everybody hits, and he hit in the fall league a couple of years ago. But I like the idea of buying low on JJ Bleday. I wish I knew exactly what I thought he was because he hasn't been the guy I thought he was going to be coming out of Vanderbilt.
Yeah, and how much stock do we put in? I do put stock in this. I'm interested in your opinion because you're dealing with the entire league. That here you get drafted in 19. You finally signed. They send you for a few games, played in 38 games. But then that offseason, you're prepping for your first year. Your dream is finally here. You've been drafted. Here's the roadmap to the big leagues. I'm ready to go. My first spring training, let's rock. And you show up and boom, shut down COVID. You lose your entire first year. You're hanging out at an alternate site, which is not even close to what you're doing, trying to learn how to be a professional and how to deal with the road and deal with playing every single day. Come out immediately to AA, next year AAA in the big leagues. How much stock do you put into that for a lot of players? Just not JJ, but for a lot of players, it's hard to it's kind of like their growth was studded a little bit. Do you put any stock in that?
Yeah, definitely some, because like you said, even if a lot of guys didn't even get to go to the alternate site. I mean, JJ did, but even the guys who did, you're facing the same pitchers pretty much day after day. It's not real games. I mean, there were teams using coaches in the outfield to, catch fly ball. Like you didn't have 2 full teams you could play. That said, that was 3 years ago now. And I really thought when I saw him in the fall league in 21, and again, everybody hits in the fall league, so I wasn't just going off the stats. He looked like he was kind of just going up there, hitting the ball hard and letting things happen naturally. And then last year, he kind of went back to, launching and pulling everything. So I know it's simpler than just saying, hey, JJ, go back to what you did before and don't try to hit everything out of the park. But I do think there's a good hitter in there somewhere. I do get more concerned when we've seen this kind of for 2 years in a row.
Yeah, for us here at the big league level, it's like we haven't seen the no shifting. We haven't seen the pitch timer. We haven't seen all of this. We read the reports. We're hearing how the game is changing. We're now getting pictures of what the bags look like, the bigger bags. We're seeing all this rule stuff. I mean, for some of these guys, now a couple of years in, how is it just going to help overall players that shifting's gone, things are a little bit back normal? We look at guys' numbers to where we're looking at, just take JJ, for instance. At one point he was facing the shift 80% of the time. How much do you think this will affect hitters, especially young kids coming up into the big leagues?
It's funny. I don't think the shifts is going to have as a profound effect as some people. The shift changes are going to have a profound effect as some people might think. I think you can make the argument that you take the shift away or you restrict the team, how teams can shift, as much as they can shift. These guys who swing for the fences, you're just giving them more incentive to swing for the fences. And you can take the shift away. And if JJ Bleday still strikes out 28% of the time, he's not going to be hitting for a high average. The shift is not going to help guys make contact. And yes, I mean, the shift takes away more hits than it gives, but you're still, with left-hand hitters up, I know you can't have three guys on the one side of infield. I still think you're going to see the shortstop standing right beside second base up the middle. And if you hit the ball up the middle, it's still going to be an out. It's going to be a little different, but it's not like, I guess the most extreme guy we can think of, Joey Gallo. It's not like Joey Gallo hits a bunch of ground balls that are getting gobbled up. Joey Gallo's striking out 35% of the time. That's why Joey Gallo's not hitting for average. It's not because he's hitting balls at people a lot. And I just don't – it's weird. This will sound weird. I think the pitch clock will help guys hit more than the shift change will. Shift change is going to help guys make contact. The pitch clock, it's going to take some getting used to for both sides. Hitters are going to have to be in the box ready to hit. But there's going to be no more of this, hey, I'm taking 30 seconds and I'm big, deep breath and gathering myself, and now I'm going to throw the ball as hard as I possibly can. No, I'm going to get the ball, and I got to be ready to go pretty quick. And I'm not going to be able to take 30 seconds between pitches so I can throw 98. So I actually think, or try to, exert as much spin on the ball as I possibly can. So I actually think, you always have these unintended consequences whenever there's rule changes. I actually think the pitch clock may help increase offense. I'm not buying the shift change is going to make that big of a deal. I really don't think it will, unless you had, and I don't think it will because guys get paid for hitting home runs, not for, look at Luis Arias just won the batting title and Twins traded him. It wasn't like they traded him for a superstar. I mean, Pablo Lopez is fine, and a couple of prospects. It wasn't like they traded him for some superstar. Luis Arias doesn't have any power, and the Twins traded him. I mean, he's got defensive limitations too, but I just don't think you're going to see 50% of the league change their approach and okay, now they're not ganging up on me on one side, so I'm going to try to shoot some ground balls and line drives through the infield. Guys are still going to be trying to launch balls, so we'll see. I'll be very curious to see how it plays out.
I'm so glad you bring up contact because I start feeling like Clint Eastwood, get off my lawn, because I kept talking about I'm tired of watching guys hit 220. I'm tired of talking about guys hitting 230. And then people coming back at me, fans, I've even had coaches, batting average doesn't matter. And I went, like hell it doesn't. It's a game of math, right? This is a game of math. All of your numbers add up. It's math. The more hits you get, everything goes up. You're on base, you're OPS. The more you do, the more production. But everybody kept trying to tell me batting average doesn't matter. Now all of a sudden we got into this world where guys are striking out so much. We're now saying, and you've mentioned a couple times, a guy like whether it's Bleday or Callis, you got to make more contact to be a competitive player.
Yeah, I mean, it's outs matter. You only get 27 outs in a game. And if you're striking out 12 or 13 times a game, that's a lot of outs right there. Now, I mean. Now, look, I get you're going to trade some strikeouts for power. Like Aaron Judge, if he wants to hit 62 home runs, Aaron Judge can strike out as much as he wants. I don't have his strikeout numbers in front of me. I know he strikes out some. But at some point, if you aren't being productive, you've got to make changes. If Joey Gallo's hitting 40 home runs, we can put up with him hitting 220 and striking out 108 times a year. But when he's hitting 160 and he's not hitting for power, he can't strike out at a 40% clip. That's just not acceptable. And I just think you have so many hitters seeking power. I'm not saying everybody needs to be just slapping the ball on the ground and bunting. I'm not saying that's the most effective way either. But if you're hitting 220 and you're striking out 30% of the time and you're not producing big power numbers, to me, you should try to make some adjustments. Now, that said, I know it's easier said than done. I do think it is harder to hit than it's ever been in Major League history. Guys are throwing harder. Guys are spinning the ball faster. You have these pitch labs with these incredible cameras where, I can go throw 20 sliders in a bullpen session, and I might have thrown 2 of them I really like, and we can look at the camera and we can see exactly where my finger placement was and how it came off the ball, and I can try to figure out how to replicate that. And it's hard. I think, it's hard to hit, and now we've gotten, used to be, 20 years ago, 15 years ago, it was like, you want to pitch down in the zone, down the zone. And the hitters adapted. And hitters got pretty good at, essentially with the golf swing, launching, going down, hitting those pitches out of the park. So now you have guys with more angle in their swing, and they're throwing 98 by you up here, and you're trying to swing like that. I mean, I know I'm oversimplifying it, but I do think it's very, very hard to hit. But I also feel like there's, I don't know if stubbornness is the right word, but there's some stubbornness to where I was like, okay, home runs are king. I'm going to swing for home runs. And I don't care if I strike out 33% of the time and hit 210. And you need to care, because it's, it's not like there's a bunch of guys hitting 210 with 40 home runs. There's a bunch of guys hitting 210, swinging for the fences, hitting 20 home runs and striking out a ton. And it's just not productive. And I think where it matters most, when you get to the playoffs and you're facing a higher caliber of pitching, good luck. Like if you're just an all or nothing approach, or it's all, I'm trying to launch balls to my pull side, you get eaten alive in the playoffs. And plus, one other thing, I know I'm rambling.
No.
The other reason it makes it harder to hit, it's not like the old days where guys, starters would go 6-7 innings, go 3-4 times through the lineup. Now you might, if you get 5 at bats, you might face 4 or 5 different pitchers, and most of those guys are fresh. And so, I think it's a huge challenge to hit, but and again, I know I'm oversimplifying it. I'm not a hitting guru or anything, but I do feel like some guys need to moderate their approach and make some adjustments, but I just don't think we see a whole lot of that.
Well, I think about the A's going into this year, how are we going to score runs? Because there's not a ton of power, but what David Forst in the front office has acquired is speed and athleticism. And with the new rules, going to be real interesting to see how that changes in the game. One player, I called Bob Melvin about this. Esteury Ruiz, we get him in the trade with Sean Murphy. He comes over from Milwaukee, but obviously he was with the Padres. Bob said he'd never seen him, but A.J. Preller and the Padres staff love Ruiz. They think he can be a great player. Keith Lippman, who has been with us for so many years now, retired, saw him in Double-A, told David Forst, I think this guy can be a star. So we haven't seen him. We just heard all this expectation of what he could be and great stolen bases, and looks like we're going to run a lot more. Instead of the swinging A's, will be the running A's now.
Yeah.
What are we getting with Ruiz, and have you seen him much?
I have not seen him personally much. I mean, I've seen video. It's interesting because you get mixed opinions. Like on the high end, you get like, okay, this guy gets on base, he makes things happen. He can steal. It'll be real interesting with the rule changes where you can only disengage, whether that's a pickoff throw or stepping off the rubber twice. And then if you do it a third time and you don't pick the guy off, it's a balk. So it'll be interesting to see exactly how much teams run. You do talk to scouts who are a little more skeptical of Esteury Ruiz. He does not hit the ball very hard at all. Like the exit velos are kind of concerning. Like the old cliche, is the bat going to get knocked out of his hands? There's some scouts have concerns about that. I don't think he drew a ton of walks before last year. So there's people who aren't convinced he's going to be this on-base machine running wild on the bases. I think there's kind of a wide variance in outcomes for Esteury Ruiz. So it's kind of interesting to see exactly, what he becomes this year. I mean, the nice thing for him is he's going to get the opportunity to play. And so it's not like he's going to be on a short, he was on the Padres. Padres are trying to win. So it's like there's not a lot of opportunity. They had a bunch of infielders. Obviously, you can play the outfield too. But they had, it wasn't a lot of opportunity. When you play, if you aren't producing, they're going to go on to the next guy. With the A's, who are, rebuilding right now, I would assume he's going to get 500-600 plate appearances to show what he could do.
No doubt.
I think that's useful. Like you mentioned, JJ Bleday, not that the Marlins were going to win the NL East. But again, I do think there's a little less pressure. Like, okay, look, there's no expectations for this team. Just go out there and play and show us what you can do. And sometimes guys blossom with that.
Well, this time of the year is always near and dear to my heart, being a former college baseball player, and my juices start to flow a little bit even though it's been a long time since the early 90s back in the day. But I know you follow it as good as anybody. College baseball is healthy. To me, it's amazing. The technology, the coaching, the data, everything is it's light years from where, and our conference was great. I played at San Jose State, and we had Fullerton and Long Beach and Fresno and UNLV, and we're playing against Stanford and Cal and all the Pac-12 schools. I mean, there was great players, guys that became Hall of Famers, but the data and the training and everything is so far different from 30 plus years ago. Just talk about how healthy and how good college baseball, the state of college baseball, is right now as it's starting up again.
Yeah, no, I'm excited. I'm getting ready to head out. I'm actually heading out to Arizona tomorrow to broadcast the Desert Invitational. We're doing 3 games on MLB Network, and then I'm also doing one streaming only, which is kind of cool tournament with 7 teams out there. But yeah, no, it's funny. So when I started Baseball America way back when, my first full year was 1989. I was on the college beat, and I love college baseball. I loved college beat. But honestly, back then, you could probably come up with a list of 12, maybe 15 teams, and 6 or 7 of those teams were going to be the 8 teams in Omaha every year. You'd have teams sneak in. The facilities, I can't speak. The facilities are, as you know, Chris.
Yeah.
Like facilities now are crazy. Like everybody has, like, not everybody, but like there are so many nice ballparks with great playing surfaces and great, batting cages under the stand. Like it's light and day. Night and day. I'm making up expressions, but like back then, the great facilities were the exception. Now it's the rule. And it's not just a great facility. Like you got to add to it because everybody else is adding to it. It's like an arms race. Like you said, I mean, the technology. I mean, there's teams, college teams that have pitch labs. And I mean, you're seeing a lot of pro teams hire college coaches to be big league pitching coaches, to be minor league pitching coaches. I think, because of this, there's more interest, there's more opportunity. There's a lot more teams that, have a chance to get to Omaha. There's a lot more quality teams. The conferences run deeper. College baseball was good when I was covering it back in the late 80s, early 90s. But it's definitely like it's light years compared to where it was, just in terms of the facilities. Like I said, the technology, just the things players have to work with. I think the coaching's better. Like when I started, Chris, I would say they hated each other, but like pro teams, college teams, they sparred all the time. Like they were criticized. You always hear, college coaches are breaking pitchers, this and that.
Too many innings. Ben McDonald's pitching too many innings.
Yeah, there was not a lot of mutual respect, I guess is the nice way to put it, when I started. And now, like you see, there's all kind of there's a lot of great coaches at various levels of baseball. And like I said, you're seeing major league teams hire college coaches left and right. I think the coaching's gotten a lot better, not just the head coaches, but also like the assistant coaches. Like it's a lot better. So it is exciting. I don't think the college game has ever been healthier. Product on the field, I don't think it's ever been better. It's just you have so many more quality. And I haven't followed this as closely, but I think there's talk that with some of the changes that we may get, it's possible we might get a slightly expanded tournament. The regionals might go greater than 64 teams, what they are right now.
Yeah. I mean, expansion and playoffs has worked everywhere we've seen it. Let's end on this. And because you're talking about facilities, and Billy Beane, who's been to all the colleges, he's seen everything. I mean, when you start talking about the hundreds of millions of dollars that get poured into college football and college basketball, well, you can only build so many locker rooms and weight rooms for football. At some point, it starts to filter down. And I remember Billy coming on this show, this is a few years ago, where he goes, "You're not going to believe the facilities at Ohio State for baseball. You're not going to believe it." And I said, "Billy, I do, because we see these numbers that, the Ohio State athletic department's making over $300 million a year. Well, at some point, that's got to go somewhere." And he's like, their facilities at Ohio State are better than anybody's spring training facilities, guaranteed.
Yeah, no, you're right. I mean, I'm a Georgia grad. It's the same thing. Georgia just rakes in money left and right. And they've obviously poured a lot of it into the football operation. but like, there's only so much you could do. I mean, I guess they could gold plate the lockers or something, but there's only so much you could do. And like, it's not like that at every school, but the schools that make a lot of revenue, like in the power conferences, you've seen them spend. And like, I mean, that's the thing. When I went to school at Georgia in the late 80s, we had our baseball field, Foley Field, was like, we had bleachers like behind first base. We had bleachers behind third base. We had the press box. It was kind of like Little League. It was nicer than the Little League field. It was like Little League field where you have the concession stand, on the back of home plate, facing out.
Yeah.
And like, you walked up and there was like press box that held maybe 4 people, like maybe 5 up above that. And like, this is true story. 1989, or no, I'm sorry, 1987. Back then, this was before the conferences figured out you want to have a host site. You can sell tickets in advance. But in 87, the SEC was still team with the best regular season record hosted the baseball tournament. So we had the best regular season record in 1987. And they didn't have a press box. They literally had to go buy like a bunch of, I don't even know if Home Depot was around that back then, a bunch of lumber at Home Depot and build this like ramshackle press box to hold like another dozen writers or so and put it next to the bleachers. But now Georgia, I think, is getting ready to upgrade the baseball facility again, and it's a nice stadium. It's probably not even the upper tier of SEC stadiums. They've got indoor batting cages and players used to have to dress over at the basketball coliseum. There was no dressing facility at the stadium. Like, it doesn't even look the same. It's not even close. And so anyway, you got me going. I can talk about college baseball in Georgia forever.
We dressed with the football players back in the day. Their locker room was not, I mean, theirs was a lot bigger than ours, but we dressed with the football players. I mean, it's like completely different now. And I just got to say this, as a Georgia grad, how much are you walking around with the big chest saying, we took down Nick Saban in Alabama, we're now the kings of college football? You've got to be strutting around like a peacock these days.
It feels pretty good. It feels pretty good. Like, I'll say it was pretty, like, I mean, obviously Alabama's, it set the standard, and like that game was tough. That game was hard. Like, that was a tough win. I'll say this year's win was a little bit easier. Like, I don't know which one I enjoy. I probably enjoyed the Alabama one more because that was the first one and it was Alabama. And I will say, took a lot of pride. Like, it was pretty cool when Nick Saban went out to shake Kirby Smart's hand at the end of that game. And he shook his head and he said, "You guys just kicked our ass in the fourth quarter." Like, the Alabama is usually the one that's trained the hardest and all that. And no, I'm very, very, very pleased. Very pleased.
And just for our fans, because our fan really, if you look at any fan base, ever since Moneyball, the book came out, and how our fan base loves prospects, loves minor league systems. Once again, when are you doing these games down in Arizona on MLB Network?
Yeah, so Friday, Saturday, Sunday, we have a doubleheader on MLB Network Friday. We're doing games Saturday between Tennessee and Grand Canyon. And I'm streaming Tennessee versus, I think, UC San Diego on Sunday. And we're in, like, I should know this off the top of my head, but I'm focused on college and the minor leagues right now. Where do the A's pick in the draft this year? Is it 5th?
7th. We got hosed on the ball drop.
Yeah, we talked to Eric Kubota on our podcast, and he was worried that might happen. Everybody who had a high pick was worried they might be the team that dropped it was them. But anyway, I was going to say, like, give you a couple guys to watch. Chase Dollander of Tennessee is the best college pitcher. He's probably not getting number 7, but there's a kid, Jacob Wilson at Grand Canyon, son of Jack Wilson, who's probably the best pure hitter in terms of making contact. He's a shortstop at Grand Canyon. He'll be on the Saturday game on MLB Network. And I think they might be playing the first guy. I should know the schedule. There's too many games. There's like 7 teams, 12, 13 games. I think you might be playing the first game.
We know there's games.
Anyway, watch. A's fans should watch Jacob Wilson because he could be the A's pick in July. And there's other talented players out there too.
What happened?
He just disappeared. Nothing on our end. I didn't touch anything.
Didn't you get to say goodbye to him?
I know. I don't know what happened. Maybe he'll rejoin. If he rejoins, I'll bring him back up. But yeah,
I saw the UC San Diego coach on MLB Network today promoting this. Big tournament.
Oh, he jumped there. He's back here.
Yeah, so UC San Diego's coach was on MLB Network earlier today promoting this. Sorry, you left us. You were talking.
I know, like I
games.
just got booted. It asked me if I was still connected to the internet, which I am. I'm not sure what happened there. So,
well, it's an exciting time as pitchers and catchers reported today. We're going to have games starting on the 25th, but I think for all baseball fans watching you guys over the weekend, watch some really competitive, really quality baseball. I mean, we're ready for it. Once Super Bowl ends, I know we'll deal with March Madness coming up here, but right now, start of baseball, spring training games, and it's going to be great to see on MLB Network over the weekend.
Thanks, Chris. I was going to say one other thing that also incredible. Thinking back to when you played, when I started covering this college baseball, back then, like ESPN had a game of the week, and it was like exciting. Yeah, you'd see Miami playing whoever. Now with streaming, I don't know how many games you can watch, but it feels like we can watch hundreds of games all season. And then when we get to the playoff, we get to the regionals, and ESPN's got that whip around show where they take you 16 different regional sites, and they're taking you from game to game to game to game. Yeah. Like, that's incredible thinking back to like how exciting it was. You got like one game a week on ESPN back in like 1990, and maybe you get a couple regional games, you get the College World Series. Now you can watch all these guys too. So it's great. It's a lot of fun being able to see these guys as often as we can.
Well, we had Ben McDonald on, right? And we're talking Orioles, A's, but I was like, Ben, when I was in high school as an aspiring baseball player, you were a star to us. Like, he was LSU, Ben McDonald. This guy's the man. I mean, Skip Bertman. I mean, this was LSU. I mean, he was like an early baseball ESPN college baseball star.
Well, he was. And if you remember, he was also the victim of one of the more memorable home runs. Like, when he was, I guess, his freshman year, 1987, he gave up I think it was a walk-off home run to Paul Carey of Stanford. It's like extra inning game. Stanford went on to win the national title. He wound up going on to be the number one overall pick in the draft. It's funny. The year he was number one overall pick in the draft, I saw him lose twice in Omaha, and he might still hold. He had a bad blister. Second game he pitched, He just got shelled. And I don't know if it's a record, I think set a record for most runs given up in a College World Series game shortly after the Orioles had made him the number one overall pick. But no, he was the guy. At that point, that was like year 25 of the draft. He was like the most obvious number one pick in draft history. Like, you knew going into the year, Ben was going 1-1, and he did. He was kind of Steven Strasburg before Steven Strasburg is what he was.
And I'll tell you, because David Esker, head coach at Stanford, has had so many of our players, especially when he was at Cal. We've had him on the program multiple times. Wonderful guy. And we always talk about his great career as a head coach, but a lot of people forget that David Esker, going back, was on both those championship teams for Stanford back in the 80s.
I'm doing the Desert Invitational. Ruben Amaro Jr. is going to be broadcasting, and Ruben Amaro Jr. was at least on the 87 team. I don't remember if he was on the 88 team. They beat us. They beat Georgia's team at the College World Series in 87. And I remember Ruben Amaro on that team too. Yeah, no, it's like I can talk about the College World Series forever. Like, that's what makes college be. College World Series to me is still my favorite event after all these years. I haven't gone the last couple of years because now with the draft combine, it makes it very tough to get out there, like with the way the draft schedules move around. But anybody who hasn't been to the College World Series, it's a great event. Omaha does a wonderful job. You see great baseball. You're going to see a bunch of future big leaguers. But I think the two hidden gems in baseball are the College World Series and Arizona Fall League are still my two favorite events.
Well, you're always fabulous. Thank you so much for your time. We're going to be watching you this weekend, Friday, Saturday, Sunday, MLB Network. You be well, and thanks for the time. Let's do this again soon.
Yeah, anytime. Thanks for having me. I always enjoy talking about it.
Jim Callis from MLB.com. Nobody does a better job covering the minor leagues than him. That's why when they have the draft, he's kind of like Mel Kiper.
Todd McShay.
Mel Kiper.
Todd. Great athleticism, great feet. He should be the one picking the draft.
He's great.